Okay, we are on. Well, hi there, Mychal.
Hey Maggie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Super happy to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to meet finally. We've been trying to, connect for a while since you started teaching at the institute. So I appreciate and that the universe has led us to this moment to finally meet and chat
Me
among
as well. I'm very appreciative.
yeah, amidst very busy schedules for both of us. So
Most
thank you.
definitely.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump right in. I was doing a little research, looking at your website, and you have these words under your name: Iyengar Yoga, astrology, Reiki, hypnotherapy. And so I want to know, like, how did you begin to explore these seemingly different modalities of spiritual healing and teachings? And of course, most importantly, how did you first learn about Iyengar Yoga?
Well, great question. And it all really started around the same time for me. I came into everything around the age of 12 years old. That's when I bought my first astrology books. And that's also when I I'm going to say got Light on Yoga. I technically stole Light on Yoga, even though I don't like to say that to people, but that's actually the story. I was in, and every time I say this, I feel as if I have to tell this story so that I can get off the karma, like the bad karma, off of me. But I was in our public library here, and like I said, I was 12 years old, and I was up in like the dusty part of the library where no one goes because no one in the Bahamas is reading any books about Eastern spirituality. So I was up in the tall part of the library where no one goes, and I saw this book. It had a black spine, and the cover was red, and it there was no words on it. So I had to pull the book out, and the book was Light on Yoga. And as I think back on that, I opened the book and I'm very positive, it was a long time ago, but I'm very positive that that book had Mr. Iyengar's autograph inside of it, which means that whoever
Oh
owned
my
the book
gosh.
before,
Amazing.
it was an autographed copy of Light on Yoga. And long story short, I used that book throughout my childhood to like do these impressive poses because I was so into it. And there's a poem, I don't know where my current copy of Light on Yoga is, but there's a poem inside the after the introduction, bliss and the blissful am I, and I am neither thought nor sound, and all of this stuff. And that was also my first entry point into poetry as well, which is important for me because, like I was telling you earlier, I'm a broadcast journalist. And so I started writing at a young age, and that's how come I went to journalism school. And my first real entryway into poetry was that poem in Light on Yoga. And really, everything magical and mystical happened in my life around the same time I learned about Light on Yoga. I got into Reiki around that same year. I got into Kabbalah and astrology around that same year. So all of these different parts of my life really happened at the same time. So my experience of Iyengar Yoga has always been caught up within this deeper understanding of the esoteric spiritual side of life.
Beautiful. Amazing that you were searching at that young an age. Yeah.
Yeah, it
So
was.
how do you unfold?
Tell me.
Go ahead. I was wondering how you unfold these teachings into your classes, if you do,
Well,
from all these different modalities.
that's a really great question. In the beginning, I was very keen on separating things out. I also went to dance school, so I trained as a professional dancer in Jamaica while I was doing my broadcast journalism degree, and then I moved from Jamaica to go to Cuba, where I danced for a couple of years in Cuba in a dance conservatory. So I was always keen on keeping things separate. So it was like, okay, I'm practicing yoga. That is yoga. I'm doing astrology. That is astrology. I'm doing Reiki. That is Reiki. I'm doing dance. That is dance. And I think as I've grown older, especially when I read more of Mr. Iyengar's own mystical writings, like, he wrote the 8 volume series Ashtadala Yogamala. And in that, he really touches more onto the subtle body and the subtle internal teachings of yoga, which for me corresponds with a lot of the stuff that we see in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika or the Giranda Samhita, or all of these other mystical books that come out of Indian culture. And then like there's little things that he drop in. I was watching a video the other day about him. He was telling Patricia Walden and Abhijata that they needed to spread the moon and the Venus on their hands in Adho Mukha Svanasana. And as an astrologer, I know that the mound of the moon is this one, and then the mound of Venus is that one. So to hear BKS Iyengar, who we think of him and we think about, like alignment, yoga, Iyengar yoga, all that stuff, talking about these subtle landscapes, these subtle astrological landscapes on the body as being a point to work from, it completely, like something completely shifted in me, and I realized then that I didn't have to think of them as two different things, because obviously from where he was working from this more subtle understanding of the body. So in answering your question, I'm very long-winded. In answering your question about how I integrate the two, or how I integrate all these different parts of my life, I don't necessarily ever think of them as being so separate, because I realize that all of them feed who I am. And so, yeah, in the class, I might say, hey, straighten your kneecap, straighten your kneecap. But then my understanding of what that does to the intelligence and the consciousness and the conscience, and my understanding of how that impacts a person is that much deeper based on my other life experiences. And so I use that as a teaching moment, not just to teach the straightening of the kneecap, but to teach how that touches you in this deep spiritual, but also very somatic way. Sorry
Yeah,
for like
wonderful.
going
And
on.
please be long-winded. We want to hear it all. We want to hear it. It's fascinating. I got chills listening to you talk about the Venus
Yeah.
and the moon. So in your upcoming workshop on May 8th at the Iyengar Yoga Institute of San Francisco, developing clarity through Iyengar Yoga, can you shed some light then on what your intention is with that workshop and what students can expect to learn?
Yeah, there was a book that I read in dance school by a dancer by the name of Eric Hawkins, and the book is called The Body is a Clear Place. And that book really transformed, I mean, just the title of the book and the concept of the body as a clear place, it really shifted something in me as a dancer, and it shifted my approach to dance and everything I did with my body, this concept that the body is a clear place. And so this workshop is pretty much based on that title of that book, that the body is a clear place. But what does clarity actually mean? And and how do we find that clarity? And this is really a big deal, and it's one of the things that I love about Iyengar Yoga. And I was interviewing Gulnaz Dashti a couple of weeks ago, and she said something in the interview that was so profound. She said, I'm not really teaching, I'm just clearing, and that's all I'm doing. All I'm doing is I'm just clearing and clearing and clearing misconceptions. And for me, when I view the teaching process and when I view what Iyengar Yoga does to a person, I I feel as if Iyengar Yoga gives us the ability to be clear with ourselves, clear with how we exist within our bodies, how our minds exist within this body, and how this body becomes a vessel for much greater experiences, basically. So the workshop, in my mind, the workshop is called "The Body is a Clear Place," but the workshop "Finding Clarity Through Iyengar Yoga" is really based on just stripping away everything and just coming into this space of a niralamba sadhana, which is essentially an unsupported sadhana that is just you and your body and your breath and your mind and the intelligence and the consciousness and the conscience and the self, and just really giving students a template to just be clear. And that for me is the greatest thing that I have within my own practice, and that I'm actively always trying to cultivate. And I'm always watching and seeing, where has the clarity disappeared? How has that clarity shifted? Why can't I find it? What will it take for me to find it again? And so this workshop is more of a lab. It's a lab for all of us to see whether or not we can hold on to a thread of clarity and extend that thread through the entire practice that we have together, which, I mean, I love it, basically. And I
Yeah,
love being
sounds
able to
awesome.
share that. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Especially also, taking into consideration what you just talked about, all the different modalities that you've been studying.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, right before we started, you mentioned just so many things that you have going on in your life right now. Yeah, so many things. I'm like, oh, okay, I have no room to complain. What gets you going? What inspires you? What do you eat? Like, what keeps you going?
Well, if I'm going to talk about what I ate last night, yesterday, I cooked for the second time ever, Japanese soba buckwheat noodles. And it was so amazing.
Right?
And I was surprised at how amazing I was at it in my first attempt. And so today I stand as a master of Japanese soba buckwheat noodles. And then a friend of mine in class, because like I told you, I'm doing school full time because I'm doing a counseling program. And so my friend in class, I told him that I was eating buckwheat noodles. And he was like, oh, wow, I just bought some buckwheat noodles. And so I said, well, if you're going to cook them, you have to cook them like this, 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 and this. And then he cooked them following my instructions over the phone. And he made amazing buckwheat noodles. So I'm a buckwheat noodles master at this point. But, but that's what I've been
Awesome.
eating. But that's what I've been eating the past couple of days because I just like to eat the same thing. But what inspires me is I saw a video on Instagram last night of one of my old artistic directors for a company I used to work with in Jamaica, LACADCO, a United Caribbean Dance Force. And Dr. Lantoinette Steins, who was the artistic director, when I danced with her, she would always tell something to all of her dancers that no matter where you go, be the shining star in that arena. And that stuck with me. And when I went to Cuba to dance in Cuba, the teachers there, and one teacher in particular, Maria Cristina, she always said to us whenever we did something or we were confused or we didn't lift the leg high enough or move the arm the way it should be moved, she'd always say, ¿Qué es la técnica cubana? Which meant, what is the Cuban technique? And when she said, what is the Cuban technique, that just sent it rung like a bell of silence within the entire room because it told you to remember where you came from and remember what this technique is that you give, that you're taking into yourself. Because if you take the clarity of this technique within itself, that clarity will tell you where that arm should be. That clarity will tell you where that leg should be if you remember where you came from. And so for me, that's what really inspires me. One, this thought of really being a shining star, not within an arena, but being a shining star within myself and always pushing myself to be the best at whatever I'm doing. And then I got a chance to be Lois Steinberg's apprentice for the majority of my early 20s. And I traveled around the world with Lois, and I went to Brazil and all over and Bethesda and all of these places with Lois. And even though that's only two places, not all these places, but I went all around America and all around, and I went to Brazil with Lois. And I mean, working so closely with Lois really leaves an imprint. And that's something that I've really come back to within my own teaching and within my own life, that action must leave traces. If you study with someone, the traces of their teaching should be within you. And if you've studied consistently with someone, the traces of that should be within you. And so that's what I'm like, I love this thought of being imprinted upon. And so I really cherish the fact that I've been imprinted by these strong female women teachers within my life. And those are the things that inspire me, because if I ever feel like not doing something, I remember Lois, I remember Maria Cristina, I remember Lancelot Steins, and those are the things that push me on to be the best that I can be.
Wonderful. Well, this leads to, I think, the last question that I have. Students now in the US, at least on this side of the continent, can now join your class on Sundays at 8:30 a.m., the all levels class through IYISF.org. How has it been going for you?
Those classes have been amazing. I love my students at IYISF, and and we have a really lovely family. And I know that in the beginning it was a little bit of a rocky relationship because I have a very strong personality. I don't know if you can tell, but but I have but I have a very strong personality, and I consider myself to be a really strong teacher as well. Um, and and so it was an interesting thing to see that. And, I'm from the Caribbean, I'm from Jamaica, I'm from the Bahamas. So I teach like someone from the Caribbean, which I know for American sensibilities isn't always the nicest thing. And it might sound a little bit, too much hard, whatever the words are, what you would say about just Caribbean culture. But I mean, I love my students, they love me, and everyone who started for the most part has continued to come. And we have a solid group of about, I dare say, 15 people who comes to that class. And I love the thought of being able to grow with people. And I just love the container that IYISF has created. So, I mean, thanks to you all, and thanks Teresa, and thanks everyone for making that happen, because it's really a treat to teach in a specifically dedicated Iyengar yoga space. I've been teaching throughout the pandemic in a lot of non-Iyengar yoga spaces because I have friends who own yoga studios that aren't necessarily Iyengar yoga based. So I teach in New Orleans, and I teach in Montana, and I teach all over the place basically. But it's been such a treat to be able to teach in a specifically Iyengar yoga space, because you know what you're getting and they know what they're getting, and the energy is completely different because it's such a beautiful system that we practice and that we share.
Beautiful. What a great note to end this with, I think. Is there anything else you want to add? I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, I'm just wonderful.
Well,
Anything else you'd like to add about? I mean, I think you have definitely an infectious energy, so thanks for
well,
bringing that on and sharing it.
well, thank you for holding this container. And I just want to let people know that you can come to class on Sundays at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time, which is 11:30 in the Bahamas. You can come to class on Sundays, check out the IYISF website to find out more information, and also come to the workshop. The workshop is going to be May 8th and 9th. I'm saying that correctly?
Just May 8th.
Oh, sorry.
As far as I know.
Yeah. I think we were thinking about a 2-day thing initially, and they're like, nope, you only get 1 day. So the workshop is going to be May 8th. Please do come. It's going to be a lovely experience, and I can't wait to see everyone.
Great. Thank you, Mychal.
Thank you so much, Maggie.
Bye.
Bye.